Okay, I'm going to be talking about glazing your pieces. The first thing you want to do is you'll look at the chart. And you'll pick a color that you like. After you find that color, you want to make sure that it's food safe, and it will say something like non-toxic, lead-free, or it could say dinnerware safe, and that states that it's okay and it's food safe. If it's only for decorative purposes, and like your hard slab, and you're not going to put any liquids in it or M&Ms, it does not have to be food safe. Okay? All right. When you pick the color, you want to make sure also that it complements your piece. For example, my coil pot here has tons of texture, so I want to choose a piece like this glaze right here. This is a mixture of turquoise and nutmeg. This gets in the grooves and it shows off the texture, whereas this yellow color is just flat. It really doesn't do anything for the texture. Same way with this mulberry color. It's very flat. There's not much happening in the texture. Whereas this green color, you can see it darkens in the grooves. So these that look different in the grooves, nothing different was done. They were just, the same color was put here as here, it just puddles and pools differently where there's texture. There's also some that have their own texture, like this color right here. So this has like a speckled texture everywhere. So you want to pick a color that accents your piece. You don't want to choose a color like this where you have texture and it just flattens and kills your texture. You want to show it off. So that's one reason that texture is so important in ceramics, is the glazes will show off and heighten that texture. All right, after you find your color, you're going to make sure the lid is on before you start shaking it, and then you want to shake it. And it should, and this is to mix it up, and it should sound liquidy, but it's pretty thick. Glazes are. They can range from being super thin and watery to being thick. Generally don't add any water to a glaze unless we've talked about it. Okay, after you've done that, you use a regular bristle brush. And while glazing, I'm just going to start with the base of the pot here. You want to make sure that you get the glaze into all of the grooves. It's not like painting. It goes on pretty thick, so you're going to generally want 2 coats brushed on. And you can see it's drying down here already. So one of the hard parts when glazing is remembering where you are. So you want to kind of remember, I'll remember I'm between the handles, and I'm just going to work my way around, continue glazing as I go. Sometimes it's helpful to look underneath, but you want to work it in all the grooves. Notice how I'm really pushing it in those grooves. You'll also notice I am not glazing the bottom of the pot or the bottom of a lid. This is called a dry foot. You do not want glaze on the bottom. Glaze is liquid glass, and when it heats up, it's liquidy and it has silica in it. When it hits about 1800 degrees, and then after which it cools, it turns to glass. And so if you put glass between the bottom of your piece and the shelf, it will stick when it dries, like a melted bottle. So you want to avoid glazing the bottom. We need a dry foot. The second thing you might want to note is the color that I'm using here is very similar to, it's a greenish color such as this. It's called turtle shell. It is not the color that it will be later. Right now it's an ugly brownish gray color, but later on it will be a completely different looking color. So once it fires, it's a chemical reaction. Glazes have oxides in them and other chemicals that when they reach a certain temperature, they change. And sometimes one glaze can look different at different temperatures. Okay, so now I've completed my first coat, and you can see it dries to a chalky, ugly color. Now I'm going to put on my second coat. This one will take a little longer to dry, and you just want to, again, you want to remember where you are and where you start. And know that even though it does not look pretty now, once it's fired, it will become glass and it will be shiny and beautiful. Okay, once you complete your second coat, the last thing you need to do, remember we need a dry foot, is I'm going to carefully set it on its side. I'm going to take a sponge with some water and I'm going to wash off the foot. Even if I didn't intentionally glaze the foot, glaze always gets on the bottom of the pieces, and so we need to wash that off. So we want a dry foot, and it's okay if it becomes stained. So you can see the bottom of my foot is being stained gray, but the glaze is gone. The pigment's there, but the silica or the glass part itself is gone. Some other things to note when you glaze. You might notice kind of chunks within the glaze. Those chunks are often little crystals that will give bursts of color if you chose a glaze that has that. A glaze like this, for example, might have little crystals in it. Okay, and then after this, we glaze fire it at a higher temperature and you get your piece back. Thank you.